Hello and welcome. This is Charlie Hartman at the Lily Centre with Dr. Brandy Eisjermans for today's Living Talks podcast. And today we are going to talk about living where your feet are.
Good morning.
Good morning. So this is one of the most common situations I have at my information coffee mornings that we hold here. We'll have a newcomer.
Delicious free coffee, by the way. So please come down.
Absolutely. Thank you. And some rather good teas, just to say.
Yes, indeed.
So very often I'll have a person sitting opposite me who is fresh off the boat, as we like to say. They've just arrived in town and their belongings have arrived. They're in the process of unpacking and they're saying to me, great, and I've already sent out 20 CVs and, you know, this is going to be so cool. I expect within 2 months I'll have a job. I'm going to crack this German language thing. You know, it's all going to be absolutely just done overnight. And I'm afraid I have to be kind of the bearer of bad news that it takes a little bit longer than that. Mm-hmm. And I just thought that was a subject that we could be talking about, that this transition period is not an overnight thing.
Yeah, and because, you know, you're talking about a mindset shift, right? And what you're experiencing is that their belongings are here, they're physically here, but they are not living here yet. Their mindset, their energy level, their pace of life is still from either their country of origin or wherever they're coming from, right? And so that changing of the tempo is something that a lot of us don't quite respect, how delicate it can be, how painful it can be, how confronting it can be at times, right? When you're used, especially if you've, you know, say you've come from a big metropolis, and Luzern might be quite small comparatively, or maybe it's a big city compared to where you're coming from. You know, that pace of life, that adjusting of expectations, both outside of yourself and within yourself. We really want people to take some time for that, because I find in my practice, but also I know that we see at the coffee mornings quite often, people are they're still there, even themselves in the other space, right? It's still a huge part of their identity, and a lot of that might shift and change through their process and time here. And I guess the more flexible we are to live in the space that we're in and try and adjust to it, the smoother it goes, right? Life will still throw its curveballs, for sure. But there's a difference between someone recognizing there needs to be some space for that adjustment too.
Right. So that I think that's very much the main issue is, for example, when somebody comes with a partner and the partner has a job, it just helps the process because you have a sense of immediately belonging because you're going into a new corporate world, you're given responsibilities and everything, and you expect your partner to pretty much slot right in too.
Yeah. And
as the partner, you kind of feel guilty that isn't happening immediately.
Yeah.
And you're really kind of wondering, you know, okay, I'm ticking all these boxes and why isn't it happening? Why haven't I got the job interview? Why can't I speak better German? And it just, the frustration mounts and mounts and mounts. And my piece of advice is really slow down and be kind to yourself, because it does take time.
Yeah, and what we know is that this practice of, you know, you guys living where your feet are, but even just being where your feet are, is a really helpful practice to keep that awareness. So when we're talking about mindfulness or self-awareness as a technique that can help ease with your adjustment, your assimilation or acculturation process, but just really the adjustment specifically to these early moves or even seasonal moves if you've been here for a while and getting used to the pace of life here, often linked with calendars that you may or may not be oriented to if you haven't been raised with them. And that can be really helpful to take that time to take a step back and be aware of what's going on. One, it helps us to be able to accept it more, right? So when we come and we're in a mindset of a place that we just came from, it's like, why is everyone doing this, quote unquote, wrong, right? And, it can be affronting when something is done very differently from you. But when you can take a step back and be aware of it, you can realize, oh, okay, my mind and my body and my spirit have not actually caught up to what's going on around me. I'm still somewhat in this other space. And so can I use these moments of self-awareness to remind myself to be right where my feet are? I'm right here right now. That's my past. I have another future ahead of me, but I have right now. And what is the right now? What is the present moment telling me about what my needs are, about what adjustments are going to take place and how ready I am for them? And when there's an active listening to that, we find that people recognize what their support needs are. They're able to prioritize reaching out and making those connections. And oftentimes a slowing down and rebuilding of the social collateral of the relationships starts to, in a kind of paradoxical way, get people there quicker, right? So taking a step back and recognizing what their needs are, but also starting to build relationships with people organically might even, for the job seeker, for the person trying to figure out what they want to do with their time here, can really be a helpful process. But even for other people, adjusting different facets of their identities as they come here, their status may have changed, gender norms may be different here, their age may be perceived different, and all of these different aspects of themselves have to adjust. So taking a step back to say, okay, what's going on now, both internally taking note, but externally taking in and consciously kind of accepting, right? Not always agreeing, but accepting what's going on around you and what, that's reality, can really help in the long-term adjustment of some of these folks coming over.
I think for a lot of people, it's a very daunting prospect, though, to stop.
Oh, yeah.
To stop and look around and assess yourself. It can sometimes even be quite painful.
Sure.
Because it is this very often realization that your status has changed, that who you were is not who you are anymore. Mm-hmm. And there is this mirage of who you would like to be.
Yeah. Or a sense of loss of a part of yourself that's not recognized here, and taking time and space, that's a real loss. And it can be a transformation, but only if you take the time to recognize, there's some sadness and disappointment that, maybe my job title's not recognized here, or maybe my stature in the community is very different. Legal statuses, all sorts of things can change. And if that is something where you're recognizing, I'm really experiencing some loss, that giving yourself some time for that loss to process that and to realize, okay, what kind of supports do you need to turn it into a positive growth from that loss, instead of something that you kind of go forward with the status quo of your old, timeline, of your old expectations of yourself. And it's not an easy thing to do. Self-awareness is a constant practice for all of us, but it's all the more important for people adjusting to a new space and time and the whole construct of who they are in that place.
And it's actually quite an empowering experience once that you really take that step to live where your feet are and to really accept your current situation. Mm-hmm. Then it's opening a whole myriad of possibilities. And one thing that we notice is a lot of people end up fulfilling their dream job or whatever. They say, you know what, I can't be that whatever it was in that corporate world, but you know what, I've always dreamt of making jewelry, or I've always dreamt of having my own fitness program,
and having that space to be able to recognize that and let go of when ready, and accept that certain limitations do exist, and some things, for a plethora of reasons, won't be the same. Not better, not worse, but different. And if you can embrace that difference and what that means for you, then you can get out of the resisting, right, where our pain lives, our resisting of all of that, and come to a point where you can honor it, honor the pain that may be part of it, and give yourself space for that. And then you can start to imagine, because you've recognized what the realities are, you've made space for getting the right supports for yourself to make meaning of this change for you. And then you can start to explore, well, if this is something that I just truly, is going to be different for me here. And this can be various aspects of life. And when we talk about jobs and things, it could be, access to your favorite foods from your country of origin, and that resistance of it's just, I really just want to have that dish. That's like my staple dish. And getting access to those things, it might be too expensive or might be too complicated. And what is my life without that thing we used to eat every Sunday night? I mean, it can be very simple things that are actually rather radical adjustments to us creatures of habit, right? And so it's finding, what is your new habit? What is the new thing that you love here? And oftentimes that's a prompt that we use in our discussions for people to adjust is, what are the things that you can see yourself loving here? And how much time and space are you making to pursue those things? To find the things that you love about this place, about Luzern, about your neighborhood, about your community. And what do you have within yourself that you can see being able to share with that community on whatever level? And when you can honor what you bring while also accepting and appreciating the gifts of the local community or host community, then it really does start to become a whole lot easier. But it takes an awareness of all of that going on, instead of kind of trying to replicate what you had, quote unquote, back home or in your last place. In Luzern, and recognizing that apples to apples was maybe never a realistic expectation.
And that's, I think, quite true, especially here in Luzern. Things are much, much slower here. But once that you accept that, it's actually very nice to take your time through life. That's at least one of the positives for me.
Yeah. It reminds me actually of a book from my daughter. It's a take on, it's called The Three Questions, and it's a take on some of the literature of Leo Tolstoy. And it was really, a child asking these different animal friends, what is the most important thing? When is the most important time? And who is the most important one? And all of his different friends had different takes, whether more collectivistic or individualist, or and from different kind of philosophical and political stances. And what it came down to is, he was trying to search for these answers, but the answers were actually always apparent to him through the seeking of the answers. He was actually the presence of the answer was there the whole time. And the reality is that, the most important thing to do is to give what you can, do what you can do. And, giving of yourself and recognizing what you have to offer in the community is a big step. When is the most important time? Arguably, it's now, right? We can't bring the past into this new space, and we don't know what the future brings. And for many people, that may be very uncertain as to whether it will even be in this space. So the presence of being here and living where your feet are, it forces you to live in now, in this moment. And the most important one is the one that you're with, because that's, many of us, especially in these early stages, we maybe long to be with people, or even in our home country, maybe more kind of abstract. Maybe there's turmoil going on. Maybe there are things that you want to be a part of. And while that's important, there's an element of recognizing how much of that is healthy and how much of letting go of your kind of active thoughts, or maybe even preoccupation with what's going on back home, or in wherever you just came from, can help you to recognize there's a plethora of information coming at you right now about what's going on right here and right now. And that's actually going to guide you towards getting settled here. And so being with the one you're with, actually sitting and slowing down and really getting to meet people, not striving straight for the goals, which has its meaning and purpose, but actually taking the time to connect with those people paradoxically builds the relationships that will open up the opportunities, whether it's social, whether it's finding, another mom that wants to go walk the lake with you while the kids nap in the strollers, or whether it's, meeting that business connection that gets you your next job. That actually, when we live where our feet are, when we're present with what is here, both what's going on internally and externally, we can adjust so much smoother. Easier said than done. But if it's something that we stay aware of, then it is something that we can impact more. And I know that you see a lot of people in your coffee time. So I imagine that you could have a lot of those experiences where maybe they're still kind of in the mindset from from where they're coming from.
Yes, and I think one of the problems that quite a few have, in fact, that we all have as local internationals, is that we have family in another country.
Yeah.
And we have several examples of people who would love nothing more than to be here, but they aren't able yet because they have demands back in the other country.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so they literally have one foot in both sides.
Mm-hmm.
And they come and express their frustration that they aren't further on down the road on this side, and yet for a various number of external reasons, usually they can't let go of the other life yet.
Yeah.
And I think that is also quite a tricky adjustment.
Yeah. And maybe even letting go is not quite the word. We use that quite often. And for many of these things, it's not even a letting go, but just a recognition of what is, right? That, of course, your family and your country of origin and the various cultures you've lived in and the meaningful relationships in your life are going to continue to be meaningful. They will also adjust and change with your life here. And part of taking that space is recognizing how much you can be present and how much, healthy approaches, either having a healthy emotional distance or compartmentalizing, can help you to at least make sure that you're consciously having facets of your day where you're living where your feet are, even if there are moments that tug you back, even if there's a string, connected back to this loved one or to a cause that is really meaningful to you. We have many people who come from countries where things are not politically where they want it to be, and they still want to impact change, and that's a meaningful part of their identity. And I think that that's a healthy thing to do, but you have to look at the bigger context, and you can't really look at that bigger context unless you take a step out or to step back from time to time. And I do think that kind of using you know, whether it's a mantra or just something that you keep in mind is, you know, when you're struggling, when you're having a hard time, is thinking about, you know, am I where my feet are? Like, am I here right now? And is it meaningful for me to be here right now? Do I need to attend to things, very real things that are not here? Yeah, that may happen too. But to consciously do that so that it doesn't become all of your time or a majority of your time is in a space that's not where you're living. Because we know that if you're not where your feet are, right, it's very likely you're also ignoring not just externally what's going on, but also internally what's going on. And for you to get those supports, whether, you know, it's just being heard, having someone recognize that it just sucks, or things are challenging right now, or there's disappointment that things didn't work out the way you wanted, or even, you know, I've seen people where it's like, wow, actually things are really great, and I feel kind of guilty about, you know, just how great they are here, and I feel maybe disconnected, and like, okay, let's navigate that. Let's navigate a meaningful interaction with things outside of here, while also allowing you to be here and allowing you to be to take in the pleasant moments, but also recognize and reflect on the painful moments so that you can find a way to integrate it into your life. When we make time to do that, we're much more active in our adjustment than kind of getting off the plane, hitting the ground running, and bringing that same energy, that same timeline, that same pace of life probably is not an exact match to here. And part of adjusting well is taking a little step back to say, okay, I'm going to have to reset this. What is the pace here? I know, coming from Southern California, I had my pain points of like, just, wow, things are really a lot slower here in many aspects than my worldview has told me it should be, right? It shouldn't take so long for this, and why is this happening? And instead of getting caught up in the shoulds and the ought tos and musts of myself and the things going on around me, part of it was maybe coming at it with a little bit of non-judgment, a little bit of curiosity, being aware of what my changing needs were, taking good care of that, and reaching out and getting support, because you're not alone, and connection through this process is everything.
And I think that's very much one of our key points in our mission, is to connect people as soon as possible so that they can relate to somebody or get the help and the support that they need from others around them, or just come and just be told it's okay. Please don't be so harsh on yourself. Take time, adjust. It's okay.
Yeah, and it really is that first step. Connect, grow, thrive, right? I mean, exactly. You've got to connect. You've got to have space, whether that's space to kind of recognize losses, recognize adjustment, recognize needs in that process. All of that helps give you the information you need to navigate this sometimes really complex process.
Yeah. It's always a pleasure talking to you, Brandy.
Same to you.
Thank you everyone for listening, and come and join us at the Lily Center. We are here to help you connect, grow and thrive in Switzerland.